Hey guys, and this is our new podcast entry for Story Thieves by James Riley. I just posted the Harry Potter book club entry yesterday, and I was thinking shouldn't I record one of these soon? And then this morning, because it's July 28th right now, I posted a short about me having this new book club book, and I was like, oh dang, I have to actually record stuff. So that's what I'm doing right now. I have to record this. Yeah. I feel like I'm half asleep right now, even though it's 1:45 p.m. It is 1:45. I don't know how I just guessed the time. Well, it's actually 1:46 right now, but I'd say it's close enough. So yeah, if you're new to the channel, please consider watching my other book club entries. I'm not even gonna tell you to subscribe because you should want to do that on your own turf, and I shouldn't have to completely what's the word that I should say, keep hustling you and saying that you have to when you really don't. I mean, you can if you really want to. I have 17 subscribers right now. I'm pretty proud of that. So even just watching one of my videos is good. It's not like I'm actually getting anything out of this. It's like summer vacation and I'm bored most of the time. And I love to edit. I think it's really fun because then I can add text. I just got DaVinci Resolve because I have a MacBook Air. It's rose gold. Yeah. And I just started editing on it yesterday, and it's very different from editing on InShot. I'm going to still say that InShot is the best, but, yeah. We should probably get into reading the first chapter of this book, though. So, I actually have 2 copies of this book because I actually got a copy, I think from Barnes & Noble, and then I was like, I want to read the rest of the series, so I went on Amazon and I found a box with all the books in it from the series, and it had the first book in it, so I just got 2 of the first book now. So how about before we do this, we'll read the back cover. We're going to read the first cover, and then if you haven't read the book yet, you can exit out of the video. So yeah. So it's called Story Thieves by James Riley. So let's read the summary on the back cover. Life is boring when you live in the real world instead of starring in your own book series. Owen knows that better than anyone, with what the real world's homework and chores. But everything changes the day Owen sees the impossible happen. His classmate Bethany climbing out of a book in the library. I think that's Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. It doesn't say that in the summary, though, so I'm going to keep reading. It turns out Bethany's half-fictional and has been searching every book she could find for her missing father, a fictional character. Bethany can't let anyone else learn her secret, so Owen makes her a deal. All she has to do is take him into a book in Owen's favorite Kyle Nomenfoot series, and he'll never say a word. Besides, visiting the book might help Bethany find her father. Or it might just destroy the Kyle Nomenfoot series, reveal Bethany's secret to the entire world, and force Owen to live out Kyle Nomenfoot's very final adventure. Yeah, so that's the summary, and I guess now I have to read the first chapter. Don't hate on me for my very bad reading. I might stutter a lot. I don't read out loud. I think when I did Where the Forest Meets the Stars, I think that's the first time I've actually read out loud. And I've read out loud, I've read stuff, like note cards for school and stuff. But like actually reading a book out loud, I think it's been a very long time. So yeah, I'm just getting back into reading out loud. So yeah. Chapter 1. Owen wanted to scream at the horror before him, but the sound wouldn't come and the nightmare only continued, forcing Owen to ask himself deep down one question. Can anyone tell me what 3/4 times 2/3 is? Mr. Barberry stood at the board at the front of Owen's classroom, his arms folded, waiting for a hand to rise. Why'd I say rise? It's raise. Maybe it is rise. Like, I have debates with my friends over roof or roof. I think it's roof. It is roof. If I say it's roof, well, that's my personal opinion. It's not a fact. Alright, where were we? Oh, we were at the rise part. No, not that question. The real question was this. Was there anything in the world that could possibly be more boring than fractions? Owen frowned as Mr. Barberry gave up on volunteers and just picked someone. Mari, 3/4 times 2/3, being locked in a room with no windows or doors, without anything to do, while wearing a blindfold and being forced to name various types of trees, that'd be pretty boring, but not fractions boring. 1/2, Mari answered, and Mr. Barberry nodded. Maybe if someone gave you enough soda to keep you awake for hours, then read furniture building instructions to you in another language? Except, what if you accidentally started to learn that foreign language without realizing it? That would almost be considered worth it to some people. So that was instantly out. Owen, Mr. Barberry said, how about you? 1/3 times 2/3. 2/9? Owen said, faking enthusiasm. That's right, Mr. Barberry said, and turned back to the board while Owen let his mind wander again. Maybe being stuck, homesick, and too feverish to think or do anything except watch TV, and the only channel that came in was an infomercial for other infomercials. That would be pretty boring. 1/3 times 1/3? Mr. Barberry asked. Gabriel? 1/9. Gabriel answered, his eyes glazed over. Nope, fraction still won, and by a lot. If only the bell would ring early from some freak electrical surge. Sure, it had never happened before, but Owen was nothing if not optimistic. And that was something he was pretty proud of, since it wasn't easy to be optimistic in the face of all these math problems. How about 4/5 times 1/8? Mr. Barberry asked. Bethany, want to take this one? There was no answer, so Mr. Barberry turned around. Bethany? Owen threw a look over his shoulder and saw Bethany hunched down behind her math book, and her head not even visible. She wasn't actually sleeping, was she? That'd be brave. Dumb, but brave. Either way, at least something was happening, and that meant class got just a fraction less boring. Owen covered his smile with his hand. Fraction. Huh. Bethany, Mr. Barberry shouted. Bethany jerked back in her chair, and her math book tumbled forward, revealing something else behind it. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Oh, it's not Willy Wonka. That's what the movie is. Never mind. Forget what I said earlier. Uh-oh. Mr. Barberry just glared at Bethany for a second as she looked around, a mix of confusion and fear on her face. Owen winced, waiting for Mr. Barberry to start yelling, but unfortunately, the bell rang right at that moment, releasing them for lunch. Okay, go, Mr. Barberry said. Everyone but you, Bethany. The girl nodded, her long bronze-colored hair falling forward over her face. Owen threw a sympathetic look back at her, then noticed something weird. Was that chocolate on her chin? But then the other students blocked his view, and he shrugged, not willing to chance getting yelled at too. Besides, lunch meant at least he had a half hour of no fractions. After waiting in a lunch line that he'd have to remember to add to his list of the most boring things ever, Owen carried his tray of pizza and milk around the cafeteria looking for a seat. He considered one table with some boys from his class, but they ignored him as he walked over, so he kept going, pretending he'd always meant to sit by himself. That's why he brought a book anyway. Sitting by himself wasn't exactly new. Owen had read Kyle Nomanfoot and The End of Everything twice now, but the 7th book in the series was coming out next week, so it couldn't hurt to catch up. It had been hard enough getting a cookie? That was strange. Alright, let's reread that sentence again. It had been hard enough getting a copy out of the library anyway, despite the fact that his mother worked there. This was the book that ended with Mr. Dr. Verity attacking the Mad Juster, Kyle's teacher. After all, Owen personally knew at least 5 people who had cried at the idea that the Magister might die, and 10 people who called the series a Harry Potter ripoff, which it sort of was, but everyone still loved it. As Owen started to read the last chapter, where Dr. Verity broke into the Magister's upside-down tower, he saw Bethany stomp into the cafeteria out of the corner of his eye. She plopped down at a table on the other side of the room, then pulled out her book and looked around suspiciously, then dropped her head, ate something, and sat back up, glancing around again. What was she doing? Eating behind a book? Did she even have food? Was she... Whoops! What she was now was staring at him. Owen immediately looked everywhere but at Bethany, but it was too late. She slammed her book closed, threw him a dirty look, then exited the cafeteria with an annoyed huff. Owen sighed and dropped his own book onto the table. She was probably feeling embarrassed after getting yelled at and didn't want anyone staring at her, which meant he just made things worse. Awesome. His guilt pushed Owen up out of his seat and after Bethany to apologize or make a joke. Only by the time he got to the hallway, there was no Bethany. In fact, the entire hallway was completely empty, except for the copy of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Bethany had just been reading, which now lay on the floor just beneath the locker. Not only had she just left her book on the floor, but worse, Owen could tell even from a different distance that it came from his mother's library. That wasn't even her book. And were those chocolate stains on it? That was not cool. What was Bethany thinking? Who checked out a book and got chocolate all over it, even if it, fit the story. Other people wanted to read these books too, and didn't want to have food stains on their copy. Shaking his head, Owen grabbed the book and dropped it into his bag, then walked back into the cafeteria to get back to important things, like Dr. Verity's attack on the Magister. Unfortunately, the bell decided to ring, then cruel but unexpected. Owen sighed, then threw away his garbage and tromped back to another few hours of mind-numbing semi-learning. Eventually, mercifully, the day ended, and Owen exploded out the door like he was launched from a cannon. It felt so good to be out that he walked that much quicker to his mother's library, where she worked almost every night. As usual, Owen would go by and help out where he could, mostly because she made him, but partly because it was just being fun being all around the books. He said hi to his mom, who was running around with too much to do, then took his usual spot at the front desk where he checked people's books out for a few hours. This job could be either interesting, seeing what people were reading, embarrassing, seeing what people were reading, or boring, seeing what people were reading. Usually it managed to cover at least 2 of the 3 every few minutes. And tonight was no different. When things finally cooled down, Owen sighed and pulled out his homework, knowing that his mother, no matter how busy she was, would notice he wasn't busy and would make him do it. Anyway, only when he went to pull out his math book, there was Bethany's copy of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory in his bag. Whoops. He'd sort of forgotten all about that. He'd picked it up, meaning to give it back to Bethany and glare at her, judgmentally, for the chocolate stains. But now that he thought about it, had she even been in science after lunch? He couldn't remember her being there, or in any other class that afternoon. Maybe she'd gone back homesick after eating too much chocolate and using a library book as a napkin. Owen shrugged and checked the book back into the library, knowing She knew where to find it if she wanted it again. His mother caught him putting the book on a pile that was supposed to go back out onto shelves and gave him a look. He sighed instead of knowing where this was going. "Those all go to the children's section," she said. "I'm locking up, but I have a few things to take care of in the office after that, so finish your homework when you're done." Ugh. Of course. Owen picked up a pile of books about half as tall as he was, then walked them slowly back to the children's section. As usual, it was a mess, like a hurricane had plowed into a nuclear bomb right around the Rick Riordan books. Owen sighed and dug in, pulling a few interesting books aside as he noticed them. That was the only good part about the cleanup. He'd sometimes find things that looked like a good read. 10 minutes later, the children's section was at least cleaner, with random piles stacked on top of overfull shelves. Owen looked sadly at the stack of books he carried here to put back, then sighed again and picked up Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, knowing there'd be no room for it. But then as he found the D section for Roald Dahl, something weird happened. His hand jumped. He looked down at his hand and the book in it, thinking he'd just imagined the jolt. The book in his hand jumped again. "Gah!" he said, dropping the book. It smacked the floor hard and just sat there for a moment. Then it jumped a third time. What was happening? Owen backed away as the cover and a bunch of pages flipped open all by themselves. Was the book haunted? Was the entire library haunted? Was it okay to find that awesome even while being scared? And then, the last thing in the world that Owen ever expected happened. 5 chocolate-covered fingers pushed right out of the center of the book, grabbed the edge, and began to pull themselves out. Alright. I don't know if you heard, but yeah, you probably heard that. I slammed the book shut twice. So yeah, that's the first chapter of Story Thieves. I think it's a really good read, and yeah, you should read that and the 5. I'm pretty sure there are 5 books in the series. So yeah, I'm going to tell you, if you haven't read the book, like if you haven't read this book yet, then I'm going to tell you to leave this right now, okay? Even though if you're watching this, you probably already read the book and whatnot. Or if you just want to know what happens, I don't really recommend it, but I guess you can stay. So basically in this book, one second. So the book basically ends with Kyle in their class. I'm reading the last book of the page because I'm gonna make sure. Yeah. So they're all in a class together, and they brought Kyle basically with them. So yeah, in this book, Owen sort of gets stuck in Kyle's tale, and he sort of has to live out most of the story, live out the last book, which is really funny. And then, yeah, that's the only thing I can really remember about the book. I'm coming not really fresh out of reading it because I read it maybe 3 or 4 months ago, but it's a great book. I read the first book and then didn't read the second book until a month later because I was reading other books. So yeah. I'm going to stop advertising it and talk about the other books. I don't know if I'm going to spoil anything, so please do not stay if you haven't read all the series. I recommend that you don't stay, at least. So in the second book, there you meet like Dole, I think Holmes, which is an ancestor of Sherlock Holmes, and he sort of redacts in this book. You can see that it's all redacted, and it starts at what, like chapter, let me see. It starts at chapter 10. And you only get a couple of words in each chapter, but then during the book, the chapters come back. And yeah. And at the end of the book, they win. And yeah. The third book, I don't remember much that happened in the third book, but I know the fourth book is where it's sort of like, what do you call it? Like you choose the ending, so you basically pick something, but ultimately all the things that you choose will lead you to one certain thing. Or sometimes you choose stuff and then it makes you go back because they might die or something. So yeah, that's fun. And then in the fifth book, they beat everyone, and yeah. I know that was a really bad summary of the series, but I like how during the series, James Riley, they sort of figure out that they're being written in a book, which is funny, and so it says in the about the author at the very last page of the book, it says, strangely enough, James Riley, author of the Half Upon a Time series, doesn't actually exist. There is no record of James Riley before his fairy tale series came out, and sources say that the man in his author photos is just an actor. It's almost as if someone made up this fictional James Riley identity solely to hide his true identity. But why? And who would go to such lengths? Certainly nobody comes to mind. And the nobody's capitalized because of the character nobody. And I like how they talk to the author in the book. I think it's cool. And I'm pretty sure all of them are over 300 pages, which is a good thing if you're looking for a book that's over 300 pages. I'm trying to find 383 pages in the book. I mean, there's more, but that's just how much is in the actual story. You have a little preview of the second book too, so yeah. I feel like we don't have that much more to talk about in this thing. I'll talk about, I think next week, I'm thinking about doing the Hunger Games, but I don't know, I'm going to do it one of these weeks because I love that book series. I think Harry Potter might be one of my, I love a lot of different book series. So if you were to ask me what my favorite book series would be, I would have to say, I don't know, because I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to end this video here. Maybe I'm going to post a video about me just talking about books for a very long time. And if you want to be bored to death, watch it. I think that's a bad way to advertise that video, but still, it's going to be a great video because I'm just going to talk about books for like 20 minutes. So yeah, bye! See you guys later.